I always enjoy this special time that we get to spend so much more time in prayer than we normally do. We're really not singing more songs than we normally do. We're just basically adding a lot of prayer, which is really good. And if you're like me, I always like to hold my wife's hand when we're praying, and you get to hold hands a lot during this service, So I enjoy that. It's really special. I'm supposed to deliver a short sermon. We'll see how that goes. I do want to, since this is our song and prayer service, I want to talk to you about prayer. Prayer is pretty amazing. When you think about, and I have a picture here of kind of the globe, the world, and you think about how many people there are in the world praying right now. And God is listening to all those prayers. How many of you know somebody who doesn't believe prayer does any good at all? Most of you know somebody like that. Don't raise your hand on this one, but how many of you have ever doubted whether prayer does any good or not? Yeah, it's pretty common. Maybe you prayed about something, it didn't happen. It's pretty common. Does it do any good? Should we be doing this? Should we be praying? Maybe instead of praying, we should be out there and reaching out to people. Maybe that would do more good than just being here together and praying. Of course, the answer to that is we should be doing both. We should also. It's hard for God to guide something that's not moving, right? And so we've been praying that people will come to the gospel meeting. Now we need to go and invite them, and that's how God's going to answer that prayer. He's going to work through us and use us to go out and to bring people to our gospel meeting. But prayer is pretty amazing. There's a lot of people that struggle with prayer and whether prayer works. In your bulletin is an outline. If you'll get that out, I want to teach you 5 ways that God does answer prayer. And you can open your Bibles to Genesis 24, by the way. We'll be there in a little bit. But I want you to see, first of all, that Jesus actually promises us that we will receive an answer to our prayer. Promises is what goes in your first blank there, if you want to fill in the blanks. He promises us we will receive an answer to our prayer. He says in Matthew chapter 7, verse 8, "For everyone who asks receives." That sounds like a promise to me. Doesn't that sound like a promise? If you ask, you will receive. God is promising He will answer our prayers. So those who say that God didn't answer their prayers, perhaps what's really going on is they don't understand the ways that God answers prayer. Because there really are basically 5 ways that are in the Bible. I'm going to show you some text for each of these. 5 basic ways that God does answer prayer. But He does answer the prayer. In Romans chapter 8 and verse 32, it says, "He who did not spare His own Son, but delivered Him over for us all, how will He not also with Him freely give us all things?" You read through the Bible and you get the impression God is just eager. He's just wanting to. He's standing there just waiting for you to ask. He's just waiting. I wish they'd ask. I want to give this to them so bad, but I'm not going to do it till they ask. And any parent knows that feeling, don't you? You know you are wanting your children to come to you and ask. And then you're going to give it to them. But you want them to ask. That's how God is. He is eager to answer prayer. But we have to understand how He answers. So let's get into this. God answers prayer in 5 basic ways. Here's the first one. Yes, immediately. Sometimes when we pray, God's answer is yes, and I'm doing it right now. And we love this one, don't we? This is our favorite. This is the one that we like the best, and we expect it every single time. And if your supplication is aligned with God's will and timing, write both of those in the blank, because both of those are important. His will and timing. There's no reason for you not to expect that God is going to answer your prayer, yes, immediately. He does that. Isaiah chapter 65 and verse 24 says, "It will also come to pass that before they call, I will answer, and while they are still speaking, I will hear." You get that? While they're still speaking, I'm ready. I'm answering that prayer. We even have an example of this. Excuse me. I didn't mean to hit that. We have an example of this in Genesis chapter 24, beginning in verse 11. And the background here is Abraham his son is getting that age that he should be married, and yet Abraham is past that age where he can go get him a wife, because he does not want him to have a wife from the Canaanites. And so he makes his servant swear to me, you will not get a wife for my son from the Canaanites. Go back to my relatives. Go back to Haran in Ur. Go back over there where I came from and get a wife for my son. And so this servant leaves on this journey, and he goes to this place, and verse 11 says, he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well at the water at evening time, the time when women go out to draw water. And he said, "Oh, Lord, the God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today. Show loving kindness to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now, may it be that the girl to whom I say, please let down your jar so I may drink, and who answers, drink, and I will water your camels also, may she be the one whom you have appointed to your servant Isaac, and by this I will know that you have shown loving kindness to my master." Verse 15, before he had finished speaking, did you catch that? Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. The girl was very beautiful, a virgin, and no man had relations with her. And she went down to the spring and filled the jar and came up. And then the servant ran to meet her and said, "Please, let me drink a little water from your jar." And she said, "Drink, my lord." And she quickly lowered the jar to her hand and gave him a drink. Now when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, "I will also draw water for your camels until they have finished drinking." So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran back to the well to draw, and she drew for all the camels, and meanwhile the man was gazing at her in silence to know whether the Lord made his journey successful or not. I would say the Lord made his journey successful. What do you think? I don't think that's hard to figure out. Again, you see it. He's just like watching. He had this all planned out. Before he'd even prayed, God had started Rebekah toward the water. This was all worked out ahead of time. He's just waiting. He's waiting for us to pray, to ask. God answers yes immediately. The problem is, we think we know God's will, and we really don't. And we think we know his timing, and we really don't. But God is always listening. And if it doesn't go against the master's plan, and if it is within the timing, there's no reason God's not going to answer yes immediately. He loves to do that. But he doesn't always answer yes immediately. Number 2, sometimes his answer is yes in due time. The answer is yes, but it's not right now. It's going to be when the time is right. Imagine a 5-year-old boy who goes hunting with his dad for the first time. You're going with his dad and with his uncle and the hunting party, and he's watching everything that's going on, and he loves that. He wants to be like his dad. He wants to be like his uncle, but they have rifles and he doesn't. So he goes to dad, and what does he say? "Dad, I want a rifle." What does the dad say? "Yes, I want you to have one in due time. When the time is right, we'll get you a rifle. Now, to a 5-year-old boy, what does that sound like? No. It sounds like no. All right? Or a little girl who goes to a wedding, and she is watching everything that's going on with the bride, and so she turns to her mom and says, "Mom, I want a wedding dress." And the mom says, "I want for you to have one, but not now. Later on, I'll get you one." What does that sound like to a little girl? Sounds like no. But it's not no. It's yes in due time. And that's what God does with us. Zacharias and Elizabeth, they prayed for years, actually decades. They prayed a long time for a child until they had pretty much abandoned all hope. And then one day an angel came. Look at Luke chapter 1. Luke 1, you're probably there already. Luke chapter 1. Look with me at verse 5. In the days of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah, and he had a wife from the daughters of Aaron. Her name was Elizabeth, and they were both righteous in the sight of God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and requirements of the Lord, but they had no child because Elizabeth was barren, and they were both advanced in years. Now, since Zacharias is a priest, he goes to the temple and he is performing his priestly duties before the Lord. Verse 11 says, "An angel of the Lord appeared to him standing at the right of the altar of incense. Zacharias was troubled when he saw the angel, and fear gripped him. But the angel said to him, 'Do not be afraid, Zacharias, for your petition has been heard. And your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you will give him the name John.'" And this will be John the Baptizer. Your petition has been heard. Man, when Zacharias, I prayed 40 years ago for this, Your petition was heard. God answered yes. Your wife is pregnant right now. You guys are going to have a kid. I answered yes, but I said yes in due time. And we don't like that, but sometimes that's the answer. It's yes in due time, when the timing is right. God knows better than we do. God heard them, He answered, just not when they expected it. We have a lot of examples we could look at. Joseph prayed for deliverance when he was in jail. And he asked the cupbearer, says, "Hey, when you're released and get back to the king, remember me." And the cupbearer forgot. But later on, he remembered. Was that an accident? No. That was yes. An answer is yes, but in due time. The Israelites prayed 400 years for deliverance from Egypt. 400 years. Did God say no? No, He said yes, when the timing is right. I hope you don't have to wait 400 years, but you need to understand sometimes you have to wait for prayer. God hears our prayers. But He's not obligated to do what we ask when we tell Him, as if we're the master and He's the servant. I want you to pray boldly. You should pray boldly before God, but don't forget your place. Don't forget whose presence you're standing in. This is Almighty God. And you don't march into His throne and say, "I want this and I want it right now." Or you can try that. I don't recommend it. I would not do that if I were you. We need to come humbly before God. Number 3, here's a third way He answers. He says, yes. He answers your prayer, yes, so you'll learn from it. And here I have a warning: be careful what you ask for. I remember when I was a baby Christian, I was so impatient. And it bothered me. I did not like the way I was as a person. I had no patience whatsoever. And I was going to church with some people who were very patient. And I wanted that. And so I prayed, "God, please give me patience." And God sent into my life a young man who tested my patience every single day. He made my life miserable. And I know he was the answer to my prayer. I have never prayed for patience since then. Be careful what you pray for. You may just get it. Sometimes God does that. And maybe you as a parent, maybe you've done that with your child. They ask for something, say, Okay, I'm just going to let you have it. And then you'll see why you really don't want that. God did that to the Israelites. The Israelites asked for a king. Lord, give us a king. This is in 1 Samuel chapter 8. Guess I better get over there. 1 Samuel chapter 8. Look with me at verse 4. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together, came to Samuel at Ramah, and they said to him, Behold, you have grown old, and your sons, they don't walk in your ways. Now appoint a king for us to judge us like all the nations. You see the motive? We want to be like the other nations. They have a king. We want a king. But the thing was displeasing in the sight of Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed to the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, Listen to the voice of the people in regard to all that they say to you. For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them. You see the way that was supposed to work? God was their king. They didn't need an earthly king. Who needs an earthly king when God's your king, right? They didn't want it that way. He says, they're not rejecting you, Samuel. They're rejecting me. Don't you know that broke God's heart? Verse 8, like all the deeds which they have done since the day that I brought them up from Egypt, even to this day, in that they have forsaken me and served other gods, so they are doing to you also. Now then, listen to their voice. However, you shall solemnly warn them and tell them of the procedure of the king who will reign over them. And so he does warn them. Apologize for the whip in your notes there. That should be chapter 8, verse 11. Just skip over a couple of verses. It says, And he said to them, This will be the procedure of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and place them for himself in his chariots and among his horsemen, and they will run before his chariots. He will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and fifties, and some to do his plowing, and to reap his harvest, and to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariot. He will also take your daughters for perfumers and cooks and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields and your vineyards from your olive groves and give them to his servants. He will take a tenth of your seed for your vineyards and give it to his officers and to his servants. He will also take your male and your female servants, your best young men and your donkeys, and use them for his work. He will take a tenth of your flocks, and you yourselves will become his servants. Then you will cry out in that day because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. You want a king? Okay, I'll give you a king. And read the account. Saul, who was actually a very humble man when he started, didn't turn out to be such a great thing. Be very careful what you ask for, because the answer may be yes, so you'll learn from it. You know, a model prayer, and something that I've learned from this study, is pray, Lord, give us what we need, not what we want. And please give it to us when the time is right, when you're sure that we're ready for it. That's a good thing to include in your prayer. Because sometimes God answers yes, so you learn from it. So sometimes it's yes immediately. Sometimes it's yes in due time. Sometimes it's yes, so you'll learn from it. Number 4, sometimes the answer is no, because your heart's not right. Now, God does that. Your heart's not right. No is an answer. Your parents told you that, didn't you? I did give you an answer. I said no. That's an answer. Sometimes God's answer is no. If you're being selfish, if you're focused on selfish pleasures, you can expect a no. James chapter 4 and verse 3 says, You ask and do not receive, because you ask with wrong motives, so that you may spend it on your pleasures. God is well within his rights to say no. And he does. Look at Proverbs chapter 1. The book of Proverbs, chapter 1. And read with me starting in verse 27. When your dread comes like a storm and your calamity comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you, then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose to fear the fear of the Lord. They would not accept my counsel. They spurned all my reproof. So they shall eat of the fruit of their own way and be satiated with their own devices. The problem is people keep thinking of God like he's some vending machine. I put in the prayer, I'm supposed to get, this is supposed to pop out. It doesn't work that way. God is a being. He's a father. And what does a father do with his children? He loves them. This no because your heart's not right. It's not no forever. God doesn't say no forever. He's like a father. He's waiting for the attitude to change. You ever wait for your children's attitude to change? When that gets right, then I want to bless them, but not now. Until then, God withholds the blessing until you're ready to receive it with a grateful heart, and you're going to know what to do with it. Sometimes the answer is the prayer, no, because your heart's not right. Fifth and final way that he answers prayer. No, I've got a better plan. I like this one. Sometimes he hears us and he says, no, I got a better plan. Our feeble, finite brains, we think so small. And so we ask for this small thing, and God, in his omniscience, his infinite knowledge, has a far better plan. And so we really want him to answer sometimes, no, I've got a better plan for you. I've got a better way to do this. You know, the Jews prayed for a Messiah when they were in oppression under the Roman Empire. Lord, send us a Messiah. We want a Messiah to come in here and to conquer these Romans and to give us back our nation so that we can be a strong and powerful nation again. And God said, no, I got a better plan. I'm going to send you Messiah. But he is going to die for the sins of all the people, throughout all eternity, for the rest of the world, not just your little Roman Empire problem. I'm so glad that God said no to that prayer, aren't you? Because today we are able to have salvation because God said, no, Jews, I have a better plan that will save not just you, but everyone who desires to be saved. Let's look at some other examples here. The cripple at the Bethesda pool. He just wanted help getting in the water. That's all he wanted. Look at John chapter 5. Starting in the first verse. After these things, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porticos. And in these lay a multitude of those who were sick and blind and lame and withered, waiting for the water, the moving of the waters. For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool, and he stirred up the water. Whoever then first, after the stirring of the water, stepped in was made well from the water, for whatever disease with which he was afflicted. And a man was there who had been ill for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been a long time in that condition, he said to him, "Do you wish to get well?" And the sick man answered and said, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred. But while I am coming up, another steps down before me." And Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your pallet, and walk." Immediately the man became well and picked up his pallet and began to walk. Now it was the Sabbath on that day. This man says, can you help me get in the water? I just need some help into the water. And Jesus says, no, I've got a better plan. Stand up right now. You're healed. You can walk. That was a better plan. All right? Another example, Martha. Martha wanted her brother healed from sickness. Lord, I wish you'd come heal my brother. This is just flip over to chapter 11. John chapter 11. Let's read the account starting in verse 1. It says, now, a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So the sisters sent word to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. What do they want? They want him to get well, all right? But when Jesus heard it, he said, this sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he then stayed 2 days longer in that place where he was. Now if he loved them, why would he wait 2 more days? What in the world is he up to? Well, if you love him, Jesus, you should go over there and heal him right away. Watch Jesus' answer. His answer is, no, I have a better plan. Look at verse 21. Martha then said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Oh, he had died. Even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again at the resurrection on the last day. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? And she said to him, yes, Lord. I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world. And Jesus raised Lazarus up from the dead. The sisters said, Jesus, come and heal Lazarus. He's sick. And Jesus says, no, I have a better plan. Sometimes that's the answer. No, I have a better plan. You know, you can pray that someone will live and they might die. You can pray for that promotion there at work and you can watch that go to somebody else. You can pray that you might have children and remain barren. And you think that means God's not answering prayer. You're wrong. He always answers prayer. He just doesn't give the answer you're expecting. And he doesn't do it the way you think he ought to do it. God answers prayer. And so I have just some advice for you here as we end. Keep praying. Keep trusting God, because prayer works. Prayer works. I want to encourage you to be back tonight. My colleague Chase is going to talk about from chains to changed. Hope that you'll be here for that message. For now, we're going to close this very short sermon, and we're going to offer an invitation song. And we're going to pray for you. And if you're needing prayers of this church, we love to pray, as you can tell. And so if something's heavy on your heart, maybe you are feeling like you're just not right with God. You've been baptized into Christ, but things are not right, and your faith is not where it needs to be. We want to give you a prayer. Maybe you're outside of Christ, and you'd like to find Him today. We would love to help you with that. Please come as we stand and sing.